Chioma was once a shining star in the city, a woman of power and influence. She owned a string of successful companies, ranging from tech startups to luxury goods. Her businesses thrived, and people respected her for her keen business acumen and leadership skills. She had worked tirelessly to get to where she was, overcoming every challenge that came her way. Her name was synonymous with success, and she was admired by all who knew her. At social gatherings, people would often speak of her strength, her intelligence, and her resilience. However, not everyone shared in Chioma's joy. Her sister, Onika, had always been there, offering support when needed, but as Chioma's success grew, so did Onika's resentment. Onika, once a supportive presence, could not help but feel overshadowed by her sister's achievements. She began to envy Chioma's prosperity, and this envy slowly morphed into a desire for control. She began subtly feeding Chioma with spiritual advice, warning her of hidden dangers that could harm her. Onika's words were soft but persistent, and Chioma, feeling the weight of her success and the pressure of constant vigilance, began to trust her sister's counsel. As the months passed, Chioma became more withdrawn. She questioned her every decision and second-guessed her instincts. Onika suggested that dark forces were out to get Chioma, influencing her mind and spirit. Desperate to protect herself from these unseen enemies, Chioma began spending vast sums on spiritual protection, consulting various so-called experts and gurus. As her obsession grew, she withdrew from her businesses, allowing her trusted employees to make decisions without her input. It wasn't long before the empire that Chioma had built started to crumble beneath the weight of her own fears. Onika's influence over Chioma continued to deepen. With every conversation, she subtly planted more seeds of doubt in her sister's mind. She suggested that those around her, especially Kofi, her most trusted friend, might not have her best interest at heart. Onika painted a picture of betrayal, warning that some of Chioma's closest allies were conspiring to take what was hers. It was a message Chioma found hard to ignore, given the fragile state of her mental health. Kofi had been there for Chioma through thick and thin, a loyal friend who had always supported her in every venture. Kofi had even helped Chioma expand her businesses and had become a trusted partner. However, as Chioma grew more paranoid, she began to distance herself from those who had once been her pillars of strength. She withdrew from Kofi, hesitant to accept her help, unsure if her friend had hidden motives. In her quest for spiritual protection, Chioma had lost sight of the people who truly cared for her. Onika's manipulation reached its peak when she convinced Chioma to make drastic changes to her business strategy, advising her to let go of key employees, including Kofi. Chioma, feeling torn between her sister's advice and her love for her friend, eventually made the decision to sever ties with Kofi. Little did she know, this was the final act in Onika's master plan to isolate her sister from those who would offer genuine support. The damage was done, and Chioma's empire began to show signs of collapse. Chioma's downward spiral continued as Onika's control over her grew stronger. In her growing isolation, Chioma fell deeper into the world of spiritual advisors and healers, trusting only the voices that echoed her fears. She was convinced that her success had attracted the envy of powerful enemies who sought to bring her down. Onika promised that with the right protection, Chioma would be safe, but at a steep price. The more Chioma spent on these supposed safeguards, the more her businesses faltered. Her investments were mismanaged, and opportunities slipped through her fingers like sand. Meanwhile, Onika's jealousy festered, manifesting in more destructive ways. She began sabotaging any opportunity for Chioma's loved ones, including Kofi, to succeed. Onika fed Chioma false information about her friends and colleagues, painting them as opportunists and liars. She manipulated situations so that Chioma's trust in others eroded further. She even convinced Chioma that the illness she was experiencing was a direct result of spiritual attacks orchestrated by those closest to her. But through all of this, Kofi remained loyal, refusing to abandon her friend despite the hurt and confusion. She reached out to Chioma multiple times, offering her help, and tried to remind her of the bond they had shared. However, Chioma's paranoia ran deep, and she pushed Kofi away, believing him to be part of the conspiracy. Yet, Kofi never stopped caring. He would visit Chioma when no one else dared, offering a listening ear and a steady hand. In a time when Chioma felt completely alone, Kofi's loyalty remained a flicker of hope. As months passed, Chioma's health worsened. The physical symptoms she had been suffering from were exacerbated by the stress and emotional turmoil that had taken over her life. She spent countless hours in prayer and with spiritual healers, but nothing seemed to ease her discomfort. Onika, ever the faithful sister, continued to assure Chioma that her pain was a consequence of the spiritual war she was fighting. But there were moments, fleeting and rare, when Chioma began to question the truth of Onika's words. One day, while visiting a new healer Onika had recommended, Chioma overheard a conversation between the healer and one of her assistants. The healer spoke of how Chioma's condition was not caused by dark forces but by a simple medical issue. Chioma was taken aback by the unexpected revelation. Could it be that she had been deceived all along? The idea that her illness was not supernatural was both a relief and a shock. She realized that she had been manipulated by her sister, who had carefully orchestrated her fear and isolation for her own gain. Determined to uncover the truth, Chioma sought medical advice from a trusted doctor, someone outside the influence of Onika and her network of spiritual advisors. After a series of tests, Chioma was stunned to learn that she was not sick but her illness was nothing more than a stress-induced condition, brought on by years of emotional strain and manipulation. The realization was liberating, but it also marked the beginning of Chioma's journey to reclaim control over her life. The news that Chioma had been manipulated was both a wake-up call and a turning point in her life. She realized how deeply her fears had clouded her judgment and how far she had strayed from her true self. The businesswoman who had once been bold and confident had become a shadow of herself, ruled by paranoia and doubt. But now, with the truth in hand, Chioma was ready to take back her life, her businesses, and her happiness. She began by cutting ties with the spiritual healers and advisors who had drained her both financially and emotionally. No longer afraid of the supposed dark forces that had haunted her, Chioma started to rebuild her businesses, relying on her own instincts and expertise. She reached out to her former colleagues, apologizing for the damage caused by her absence and misguided decisions. Slowly but surely, Chioma regained the respect and trust of those who had once admired her. Kofi, despite the hurt, welcomed Chioma back with open arms. She had never given up on her friend, even when it seemed that all was lost. Their reunion was a testament to the power of true friendship and loyalty. Chioma realized that the people who had stood by her, like Kofi, were the ones she could rely on, not the ones who had exploited her vulnerabilities for personal gain. She learned the hard way that trust, once broken, can only be mended by those who truly care. Though Chioma had reclaimed control over her life, the scars of betrayal lingered. She had lost much in her quest for spiritual protection and in her blind trust in Onika. Her businesses had been severely damaged, and she had alienated those who had once supported her. The emotional cost was high, and Chioma often found herself reflecting on the mistakes she had made. She wondered how things might have turned out differently if she had been more discerning and had trusted her instincts sooner. Onika, now seeing her sister's strength return, tried to re-enter Chioma's life. She attempted to manipulate her once again, offering apologies and claiming that she had only acted out of love. But Chioma was no longer the same woman who had once relied on Onika's advice. She had learned the hard way that not all who claim to love you have your best interest at heart. With a firm heart, Chioma severed ties with her sister, choosing to protect herself from any further manipulation. The decision to cut ties with Onika was not an easy one. It was a painful reminder of the love that had been twisted into something toxic. But Chioma knew that in order to move forward, she had to let go of those who had hurt her. She began to rebuild her trust in herself and in those who had stood by her. In doing so, she found the strength to heal, not just physically, but emotionally as well. In the aftermath of her healing journey, Chioma began to reflect on the true meaning of loyalty. She realized that loyalty was not about blind obedience or devotion, but about mutual respect and genuine care. The people who had truly supported her, Kofi, her loyal employees, and a few trusted friends, had never wavered in their commitment to her. Their loyalty had been tested, but it had proven to be unwavering. Chioma made a vow to herself that moving forward, she would surround herself with those who valued honesty, integrity, and loyalty. She knew that her success was not just about business acumen, but about the relationships she nurtured. True loyalty, she learned, was not something to be taken for granted. It was a precious gift that should never be exploited or manipulated. With this newfound wisdom, Chioma not only rebuilt her businesses but also forged deeper, more meaningful relationships. She learned that the most important asset in life was not wealth or power, but the people who stood by her through thick and thin. These were the ones who would help her rise, no matter the challenges that lay ahead. Chioma's journey had been one of pain, betrayal, and ultimate redemption. She had learned the hard way that power and success could sometimes blind a person to the true nature of their relationships. But through her trials, she had discovered the importance of resilience, discernment, and, most importantly, genuine love and loyalty. As she looked back on her journey, Chioma felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had lost much, but she had also gained invaluable lessons. She had learned to trust herself again, to listen to her own instincts, and to value the people who had stood by her when no one else would. Her story was a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of genuine relationships. In the end, Chioma emerged stronger than ever, not because of the wealth or success she had once known, but because of the wisdom she had gained along the way. Her life was no longer defined by the fears and doubts that had once consumed her. Instead, it was shaped by the love, loyalty, and resilience that had helped her overcome the darkest moments of her life.